Good Friday morning. Amy Jacobson here. Paul Vallis, the one, the only, my former boss, filling in for Dan Proft. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're my boss when you were the CEO of CPS. And
right.
how things have changed.
Many moons ago.
Yes, but we'll get into that. We have Open Mic Friday, by the way, at 8:30.
Okay.
So anything that's on anyone's minds, including you, Paul, whatever you want to talk about, 312-642-5600. Just putting that little bug in your head for later on at 8:38 when anyone could call in. July 14th is the day that Ghislaine Maxwell will be arraigned. And we learned last night, in order to make sure she doesn't Jeffrey Epstein herself, so to speak. Sorry, I don't mean to. Too soon. Sorry. They have given her paper clothes to wear. They have given her a roommate, and they've given her paper bed sheets to prevent any suicide. And she's in the exact same place where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committed suicide.
They should put her in a submarine.
They should put her where?
Should put her in a submarine and submerge her until the trial date.
Well, somebody who wrote a fascinating book with Alan Goodman is Daniel Halper. The book is titled A Convenient Death, The Mysterious Demise of Jeffrey Epstein. Daniel Halper, also former Washington bureau chief for the New York Post and online editor for the Weekly Standard, best-selling author for Clinton Inc., and again, co-author of that recently released book, A Convenient Death. Good morning, Mr. Halper. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much for having me.
So
Great to be here.
The big question everyone wants answered is Ghislaine Maxwell going to turn other people in? Is she going to sing like a canary?
Well, as you suggest, I think if she's alive and if she's able to bargain with prosecutors, I think there's a good chance. She's facing 35 years in prison. Wow. We in the book called her an accomplice, and it seems like the feds agree. And in fact, she's more than an accomplice, according to some of the victims. They allege that she didn't just procure girls for Jeffrey Epstein's, his proclivities and crimes. She participated in them. And I think while facing 35 years, I think people tend to break. And people, this is somebody who grew up in luxury. Her father was a media mogul and a billionaire who also mysteriously died, interestingly enough. And I don't think she's going to take to prison very well, and I think she's going to try to get out.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Amy and I were just talking about the Netflix special.
Yeah, Filthy Rich.
Oh, my God.
Which I just finished yesterday.
Yeah, it was so engrossing. I had one of those binge showings. When I saw The Sopranos the first time, I saw them all. I was the last to watch The Sopranos.
But this was reality.
It was reality.
How is this able to go on for decades?
It just goes to show you that money does count. There is a privileged class out there who think they can buy themselves out of virtually anything. And, of course, this guy, look, what did they show during the series? That he had tapes everywhere. He had tapes in all the bedrooms on the island. He had tapes in his Manhattan house. And you've got to believe that he had compromising pictures on so many people. So I think it's a combination of that and the money and the influence. And let's face it, I mean, he just crossed all political lines when it came to who he tried to influence and who he tried to basically bring into his circle. So it's scary. It's scary. These guys think they're above the law.
Right.
I think they've got the money and the connections.
Well, so does she have the tape? Who are there tapes out there? And do you think she's hiding them somewhere, or do the feds have any tapes? What do you know?
So we know that the feds raided Jeffrey Epstein's place shortly after he died, or shortly after he was arrested, which was about a year ago. And we know that they allegedly took out some tapes and other footage. And there are rumors that she has her own stash that she could perhaps use for blackmail, or she could have used for blackmail. Now she may be able to use for bargaining if the feds themselves haven't even just taken them over. But that's sort of the deep mystery, right? So they had gotten away with their crimes for so long. What's interesting about the federal indictment of Ghislaine Maxwell is that it's not recent. I mean, the indictment itself is recent, but the crimes, the years that she committed them, were between 94 and 97, according to the feds. We know she's done that a lot more recently. And so, of course, it begs the question of why was she able to get away with it for so long? Jeffrey Epstein was able to get away with it for so long. And I think you can't help but realize that their political connections, their connections to people high up in finance and media, in politics, most certainly helped them all along the way. These are people who were friends with presidents, with President Bill Clinton and President Donald Trump. They were friends with princes like Prince Andrew. And there's a lot of people who are nervous today, fearing that Ghislaine Maxwell might spill their deepest, darkest secrets.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure I'm going to read your book too, by the way. But from that Netflix series, when Bill Clinton said, that he's never been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane or been to Little James, that island outside of St. Thomas, the flight records show that he was on that plane 26 times.
Yeah, and we report exclusively in the book that he and Ghislaine Maxwell were very close. In fact, exceptionally close. And that's one of the reasons why Bill Clinton, according to our sources, was so keen to be around Jeffrey Epstein, is that he had a relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. So this goes deep, and it's shocking. And our book lays out sort of the facts surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death, and it lays out sort of who are the people that benefit most from his death, and who are the people that he's most connected to. Whereas the Netflix special tends to focus more on the victims, and it's a compelling documentary, of course. Ours, I in my mind, focuses more on sort of his story at large, who benefits and how he died.
Okay, well, let's talk about his mysterious death. Why didn't the surveillance cameras in front of the cell all of a sudden stop working that night?
Oh, it was that. It was many things went wrong, right? So you're either left to believe that the official story, which is that he committed suicide, or you're left to believe other theories than that he was killed. Look, the physical evidence. We talked to Dr. Michael Baden, who did the independent autopsy of Jeffrey Epstein, and the physical evidence itself is more consistent, he claims, with homicide than it is with suicide. But I think what's also interesting and surprising is we talked with the lawyers, one of Jeffrey Epstein's final lawyers. And Epstein was very confident in his legal defense. He was not a man who was downtrodden, who thought that his life was over. In fact, while of course he understood that he was Jeffrey Epstein, public perception was against him, he thought his legal case was pretty strong because he had been convicted of and pled guilty to some of these crimes earlier, so he was going to use double jeopardy defense. And look, that was a state case as opposed to a federal case. I don't know whether it would have worked, but he was optimistic, and you don't really see optimistic people commit suicide, and it's inconsistent. So there are a lot of questions that are raised, and we try to lay out the facts as we know them and let readers decide what they think happened to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I agree. Not only first of all, he still had the money, he had the means. One would think that he still had things on other prominent individuals that he could have traded off. I mean, this was a guy who made his way through society, manipulating people, and always having a contingency plan. You know what I mean? Always
That's
having
right.
a strategy.
He was narcissistic.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a power hungry. Yeah,
these type of guys don't kill themselves, particularly these.
No.
Particularly when they're still worth $500 million, and he clearly has compromising information on very prominent individuals. He had so much to trade. So I agree. And
what happened to those two police officers, guards, prison guards, who were supposed to be watching him? What happened to them during that 3 hours? Did they really fall asleep?
Well, they're on trial themselves, and there is a pending legal case against. Their claim is that they basically fell asleep, or that they were surfing the web, and that they weren't really paying attention. I think that they'll speak for themselves when they're. But on the stand, it was supposed to be in June. I think it got pushed back to January because of coronavirus. But I think it's very hard to believe the official story, given what we know and given everything that went wrong from the security cameras. And by the way, people like Bill Barr, the Attorney General, they claimed that there was going to be an investigation after Jeffrey Epstein died. Whatever happened to that investigation?
What happened to the investigation?
Yeah, I know. Somebody's got to ask
these
Bill
things
Barr
just
that.
have a way of sort of going away. And it's very funny how everything that helps this political elite class favor. And in a way, it's the kind of things that wouldn't happen or had if it was you or me or anybody else in that sort of position.
All right, Daniel, before we let you go, one last question about Ghislaine Maxwell. Was she ready to turn herself in because she bought – why not stay in Paris? She came back to New Hampshire, which I'm glad she did so that the U.S. Marshals could pick her up. But she had called her friends right before and pretty much said her goodbyes to them. Do you think it was just time that she was sick of running, or what was the purpose?
I think she didn't have fear of being arrested. I think she had gotten away with it for so long that she had no reason to believe that her luck would run out. In retrospect, it's easy to say, oh, she should have gone to Paris or she should have gone elsewhere. But I think from her point of view, everything had gone in her favor, right? She hadn't faced legal recriminations for her crimes, and this was, she didn't have the fear that somebody would have, that a normal person might have had they been in her situation.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much. The book is called A Convenient Death, The Mysterious Demise of Jeffrey Epstein. Daniel Halper, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
A storm is on the horizon, and you need to keep the lights on no matter what. Your business relies on the power being on 24/7. It's the lifeblood of your data and computer systems. Weather-related outages from the power company are not acceptable. Your need for a source of power that's reliable 24/7, along with round-the-clock service that can dispatch technicians to your site immediately, is mission critical. Your business needs Charles Equipment Energy Systems on speed dial. These are the big boys, not residential or solar, but reliable industrial generators for emergency backup or events. When you need more than a 100-foot extension cord plugged into a small engine generator, call Charles Equipment Energy Systems. They keep the lights on with rental generators for job sites